Hey, I'm Chris. Thanks for being here. This is Warrior, the next episode of a really interesting series with CUAS Hub, part of SAE Media. We're talking to the most cutting edge experts with industry innovators in the military services, both across the pond and here, about counter drone. Now, it doesn't get more cutting edge than the important innovations in this area. And we're joined by one of the powerhouse industry players, AV. You may remember the Puma. They've been around for a while, they've been innovators in the area of unmanned systems. Now they're working on the Switchblade, which many of you are familiar with. And we've got a rock star guest today. We have Mr. Brian Young. He's the VP, and it doesn't get more accurate or specific than this, of loitering munitions. So we're going to talk about the Switchblade today. But first, let's welcome our awesome guest.
Well, thanks, Chris, for having me. It's been around for about 15 or 20 years now in this game, in a category that AV really invented. And so if you look back, 20 years ago in Iraq and Afghanistan, you had small hand-launched Group 1 drones that just had cameras. So it was a game-changing technology at the time. It allowed the soldier to see over the hill or around the corner, but there was a capability gap that AeroVironment and our government customers noticed at that time, which was once you saw what was over that hill or around the corner, there was nothing the individual soldier could really do anything about it. So it was at that time we worked with those government customers on inventing the category of small loitering munitions. So a soldier could take a small, 8-pound tube-launched loitering munition that also had cameras and a warhead and be able to prosecute targets once they uncovered them with their small hand-launched drones. So the combination of those two things and really the history of AV is kind of where all of that started. The lineage of the company going back some 55 years at this point, and really developing systems that are optimized for size, weight, and power such that the individual soldier can use them and carry them into the battlefield. And that's kind of where we are today.
10-4, sure. Well, a lot of people remember the explosion of AV, which was Aero Environment years ago, and the innovations that were in demand with the counterinsurgency fight that was going on. I'm really interested in the Switchblade and what some of the innovations might be. Not long ago, there was an Army intelligence report which specified that about half of Russia's active duty tanks, especially the T-90s, they've been obliterated. And the Switchblade has been a big part of that. So I wanted to get a sense of the loitering and the attack that these Switchblades are able to do as an anti-tank weapon in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So about 10 years ago, we took the idea of loitering munitions and grew that into a larger capability that included the Javelin multipurpose warhead and started developing that into what you would describe as a tank killer. And so the Switchblade 600 has been used heavily in Ukraine to do exactly what you just stated, which is prosecute high value targets and heavily armored targets. And so Switchblade 600, just to give you some specs, is a tube launched loitering munition that in its tube weighs about 65 pounds. So an individual soldier can carry it, but the idea being you need that sort of size and weight to get out to range. So Switchblade 600 can go 40 kilometers from the home station and up to 100 kilometers with either forward pass or a data link relay. In Ukraine, we're seeing engagements between 40 and 70 kilometers. And so quite a long range munition that again, an individual soldier can carry. And it's got the effects that can destroy heavily armored vehicles, including tanks. And so we're seeing that used heavily in the battlefield today. And we've heard from units that where we've been receiving firing reports, and those have reduced over recent months. And when we ask the question, why have those firing reports gone down significantly? In some cases, we've heard that they've taken care of all of the targets in that individual region with a Switchblade 600. So it's proven quite effective. We are hearing it's one of the most effective weapons from 40 to 70 kilometers in Ukraine today.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to ask about some of the technology. We always respect sensitivities if there's OPSEC, if there's only so much you can discuss. But what can we say about the guidance and the technology? Is it GPS? I would think it's more inertial measurement, maybe an RF data link. And I think of the loitering element of this, the Tomahawk Block 4 does that. It has an ISR function, right? It loiters around targets and then adapts as needed. Does this do that? I mean, let's talk about the tech.
Certainly, yeah, it's a great question. So natively, yes, Switchblade has both the GPS data link and a video data link, or a GPS link. And obviously, the situation is in Ukraine is heavily EW focused. So operating without GPS is an absolute must. And ever since Switchblade was originally developed, it technically has the ability to operate without GPS. So if you have a data link, a video data link, and the operator knows the terrain well, you really don't need GPS. And so it's that video link that's critical for giving the operator a real-time view of the battlefield and then also for targeting. So the way Switchblade targets is it uses the video, the operator identifies the target, and then Switchblade uses the pixels on that target to glide or drive the munition into the target. And so once that video feed is locked on, it doesn't need GPS or anything to prosecute a target, and that's just naturally how Switchblade operates. So I did say it does need a radio link, and that's true. So one of the things we've done to address what's going on in Ukraine is we've been updating our data links quickly based on feedback from the field. And so that's critical and will be critical moving forward to have that modular data link, that data link where the software and the hardware can be updated. And that's something we've really been focused on. And if you look at our Switchblade 600 Block 2 variant, that's one of the things that we're going to for all of the new Switchblades is a much more modular radio that can be changed out at production time, and then maybe long term in the field, but right now at production time, so we can make quick changes to those radios. But it's certainly something we're focused on, and one of the pieces of feedback we've taken from the battlefield and adjusted in almost real time, right? We're talking about months, not years worth of adjustments, which is where I think, aerospace and defense tech specifically is headed. We need to make those adjustments in real time and do it quickly.
Sure, 10-4. Gosh, really interesting. A couple of things there. I was just about to ask about EW and frequency hopping in terms of countering the countermeasure. What you said about a modular RF seems tactically very significant if you're countering a jamming attempt in order for the munition to kind of reach its target in a challenged environment.
That's right. So we use different techniques, and I won't go into all of them, of course, here, but certainly understanding where the jamming and the noise is coming from and then getting into a different spectrum or different frequency is something that makes a lot of sense. And so, again, utilizing that video data link and making sure it is always there for Switchblade is important. And the good news is, whether it's AV or a number of other different industry partners out there, small, lightweight digital radios are becoming more and more prevalent, and there's a lot of competition out there that's driving these technologies to still have them operate in EW-heavy environments. And so we want the best of breed and the ability to switch between different radio providers quickly, and that's one of the things, of course, that we're doing.
Excellent. Now, I wanted to talk about the kill mechanism. Is there obviously a human in the loop when it comes to a tank, or the tank is previously identified before the munition explodes, kind of verified to a large extent?
Yeah, so two things. Right now, Switchblade operates by having the human identify the target and then essentially select that target, and the optics and the control system do the rest. What we're also working on, and as you see some of the advanced processing we're putting into our Switchblade 600 and our Switchblade 400, are NVIDIA-based processors that can do things like automatic target recognition. And so that'll do two things. One, once you get into an area where you should be seeing targets, the system can automatically identify those targets targets and do the end game targeting for you. However, the way we see it probably most being used is in aiding the operator in identifying those targets and defining just exactly what they are, and then the operator confirming after the systems has done its work, confirming that it is indeed the target you want to go after. And that way you have a human on the loop, always confirming positive ID of that target, which we think for most customers is probably going to be the case. And then in the future, if you want to, you can take the human completely out of the loop and have it do its targeting as well as a future capability that we're looking into.
Excellent, excellent. Well, gosh, I recall a discussion with an Army four-star, Army Futures Command, talking about automatic target recognition. And he was an infantry guy, division commander. And he used to say that they would hold up flashcards for gunners, and whoever got the most identifications correct would become the gunner. And now that's not necessary because that's already done. So the computerized system, you mentioned pixels, is able to verify this is a T55, this is a T72, this is a T90, so you're not getting a false read.
Right. So you can imagine the computer identifying those targets much quicker than a human and with a much higher level of reliability. And so once those systems, of course, get there, then you either, if you know you're in a location where prosecuting targets is safe, then you go and prosecute those targets. If you do not, then you have an operator on the loop using that ATR to aid them in identifying a target and then confirming that target. So it works in a number of different ways, using your kind of flashcard analogy there.
Oh, excellent. Two last things, because I want to be sparing with your time. One is AI in terms of swarming. There must be a component in terms of modernization, some of the innovations you're looking at for applications of Switchblade and Switchblade type weapons in the future, is to have that sensing at the point of collection and some of the analytics performed so that targets can be discerned, a situation can be assessed, and analysis can be performed kind of forward at the edge.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that sort of AI and swarming capability is going to go across a number of different assets on the battlefield, right? So you'd start kind of maybe with your C2 system defining which weapons and how to use them based on your target or your battle space. And then those individual systems, once they are, let's say, in transit, somehow coordinating amongst each other with reliable links to prosecute entire spaces on the battlefield. And in that case, you won't even just be looking at explosive warheads or payloads. You'll have EW and RF direction finding and home on jam payloads in different systems. Perhaps, there's a Switchblade that has a removable payload where you can put any number of different capabilities into it, and then all of those capabilities coordinate to find the most direct and safest path to doing what the general or the commander needs to have done in that space. And so we do envision that certainly as part of the Switchblade roadmap. We released Switchblade 400 at the AUSA show last week, and that certainly has a modular front end that can swap out payloads and use various military standards for physical space and also electronic and software connection to adapt quickly to the battlefield. And then, like you say, with that sort of swarming layer that would then communicate across the entire fleet, let's say, for a coordinated attack is something that we want to include ourselves in. And like I said, is definitely on our roadmap.
Interesting, interesting. Well, you inspired another question, but first I wanted to ask about, you mentioned the 400. What are some of the innovations that AV are putting forward for this, and where do those stand in the developmental trajectory? Are they being tested, being looked at? Are they already acquired? What other innovations did we not cover?
Sure. So Switchblade 400 is targeted for an Army loitering munitions program of record that has been a long time coming. And the idea there is they wanted to, again, kill a tank at about 40 kilometers, but do it in a package that is less than 40 pounds. So that includes the missile itself, plus the launch tube needed to be less than 40 pounds. So we optimized our Switchblade 600. The Switchblade 400 still has the Javelin multi-purpose warhead. It has advanced processing, and it can get out to that 40 kilometers. calibers targeted specifically at that Army requirement. The optics are still give you enough standoff range that from an undetectable distance, you can pick up that target and apply effects on that target as well. And so that's where that kind of exists. The game-changing things are really in the modularity and the processing that we include in that platform, Switchblade 400. So advanced processing, again, allows for things like automatic target recognition and also visual-based navigation, which we need higher level processing for. And then certainly the modular payload piece speaks to the number of different capabilities that the Army wants to put into loitering munitions, and that will be kind of developed over time in coordination with our Army partners. And so just released that last week. So now if you look at kind of the family of Switchblade, we have Switchblade 400, we have Switchblade 600 Block 2, which has some of those advanced processing capabilities. Additionally, the Block 2 is IP67 rated in its launch tube. So it's very tuned for littoral operations, operations at sea, where you have sea spray and things like that coming overboard, and Switchblade 600 Block 2 can be thrown in the mud, it can be thrown in the ocean and still be used. So we released those two last week. And then one additional thing that I haven't talked about yet is our Switchblade 300 now has a tank killing or an armor killing payload, which we refer to as an explosively formed penetrator. And so that takes Switchblade 300, which, as I said earlier, is 8 pounds in its launch tube. And now you've got a tank killer that you can carry on your back and launch within 5 minutes and have it out to 20 or 30 kilometers. And so that payload should be game changing for that product. We'll qualify that over the next 8 months and then have that available for both domestic and international customers to procure.
You anticipated my last question, which was this question of variable yield. You mentioned the Javelin warhead. What other kinds of countermeasures, and can this be adapted and modular? Perhaps you want to jam a tank or communications with the Switchblade. Perhaps you want to destroy something in a more targeted or smaller way. Do you have fragmentation? God, years ago, there were metal sleeves put on the Hellfire to have an anti-personnel effect. Are there different kinds of warheads or blast effects or energetics that might inform the development of this?
Yeah, all the above. And again, this is one area where industry partners are innovating at a very fast pace. And so our job is to make sure we have the open systems ready to go to take on those technologies. And absolutely, in fact, your show focused on counter UAS. You could imagine an EMP payload inside of a Switchblade where you've got a swarm of small drones attacking a forward operating base, and a Switchblade could be put in the air with an EMP and take care of an entire swarm. And that's one of the architectures we're looking at with various companies that are developing these capabilities. And any type of EW, home on jam is another one. So you can imagine heading in toward a surface-to-air missile site that has a radar, and now I can detect that radar. I can use the radar signals to home in on that specific location, and then also have a warhead that can then destroy that surface-to-air missile site. So all of those things are becoming possible and enabled by loitering munitions. One of the things that militaries across the world haven't started doing yet is stockpiling loitering munitions as they do with missiles. And so we think that'll be the case moving forward. And two of the things that enable that are different payloads that you can carry, different types of payloads, and then also launching from other assets. So you can imagine launching from another unmanned ground vehicle, or unmanned surface vessel, or unmanned air vehicle. And all of those could have batteries of Switchblades attached to them that could be launched remotely. And we're doing experiments in that area. We did just release a press release on launching our Switchblade 600 from an MQ-9 drone. And we used actually a satellite link to control that Switchblade. So not only did we communicate with the MQ-9, we used its satellite link to control the Switchblade, which we could do from anywhere in the world in that case. So you just keep branching out from the original capability that came 20 years ago, and now we're getting into all these advanced areas with the optimization of size, weight, and power in the industry.
10-4. Well, gosh, with your expertise, you keep inspiring questions. I promise this really will be the last one. But you mentioned multi-domain. I had the honor of talking to the commander of Carrier Strike Group 2, who spent some time in the Red Sea. I have to think there's a maritime counter UAS dimension to this, at least in theory. And at very least, there's the offensive capability. Perhaps it's a swarm of small boats, which is a very real and recognized threat. What kinds of testing and preparation or even conceptual work is being done to prepare this for a maritime environment?
No, that's right. And again, Switchblade 600 Block 2 with its IP67 rating is made to go on those unmanned surface vessels and sit for days, weeks, maybe even longer at sea and then be launched remotely, right? And so that's talk about that offensive capability. You could send these USVs into the littorals while the battleships stay far away, and they could sit there at the ready to launch for attacking various parts, 100 plus kilometers inland in that case. And then, counter UAS is something we've experimented with Switchblade a little bit. It is natively made to attack targets that are on the ground. But certainly with some adjustments, sending a Switchblade as one of the layers of defense in counter UAS could certainly make sense. And again, that counter UAS area is going to be a layered system of, RFEW systems and different types of attack, finally getting to, kinetic kill, which Switchblade could certainly play a part in. And we've done experiments in the past, and with some adjustments, we think we can get to that defensive capability as well that you mentioned.
10-4, some serious expertise here. Thank you, Brian Young, for your